Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Commissioner Madaffer. Commissioner Tavaloni. Chair Alvarado.
Yes,
We have a quorum.
thank you. I seen Senator Newman. Would you like to address the commission?
Close to the action in these seats. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission and CTC staff. I was in the neighborhood, thought I would stop by. I am State Senator Josh Newman, and I proudly represent California's 29th Senate District, which includes all or parts of 16 different cities in Orange, Los Angeles, and San Bernardino counties. As one of two joint authors of ACA 5, the constitutional amendment on the June 2018 ballot, to safeguard and ensure accountability with respect to the revenues generated by SB 1, I'm here today to voice my strong endorsement of the SB 1 programs adopted by the Commission. As commissioners, you are well acquainted with the transportation funding challenges confronting California prior to the enactment of SB 1. I'd like to note that I'm joined here by my joint author, Assemblyman Frazier. And due to declining and unstable revenues last year, the CTC was forced to slash $750 million from the STIP, or State Transportation Improvement Program, which is the primary program for funding highway and public transportation improvements in California. As you are all aware, SB 1, the California Road Repair and Accountability Act, which the legislature passed this year, will help rebuild and transform California by generating and subsequently investing approximately $54 billion over the next decade in our roads, freeways, bridges, and transit, with those desperately needed funds split equally between state and local priorities. Through the new funding streams created by SB 1 beginning this coming year, California cities and counties in my Senate district and throughout the state will now receive twice as much funding by formula for repairing potholes, allowing for critical roadway improvements, and investment in new capacity projects over a sustained period of time for the first time in California in decades. Excuse me. In addition, new discretionary grant programs adopted by the Commission will fund meritorious and transformative transportation improvement projects across our state. And with that in mind, I'm here today to gently sell you on the merits of the State Route 5760 Freeway Confluence Improvement Project, which will be formally submitted next month for funding from the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. The confluence of state routes 57 and 60 is located squarely in the heart of my Senate district, where those two critical traffic arteries converge. More than 350,000 motorists a day are forced into a very narrow and short merging area. The addition of a significant volume of freight truck traffic into this equation produces hazardous traffic weaving, causing an average of almost 700 vehicular crashes a year on the freeway lanes and ramps, with 1/3 of those crashes resulting in either injury or fatality. The 5760 confluence isn't just the most congested confluence in Caltrans District 7, it also has the dubious distinction of being ranked number 1 for freight delays and truck accidents in the entire state of California. Further, and notably, it has also been ranked as the number 6 freight bottleneck in the entire nation. Last year, the voters of Los Angeles County approved a sales tax measure that will eventually provide $250 million for the 5760 project. Equally encouragingly, the federal government has further recognized the significance of the project with the prospective award of a Tiger Grant. But in order to round out the project's total budget, a state contribution will be required, and the SB 1 revenues distributed through the new trade program will be essential to ensuring the project can be constructed in a timely and well-coordinated fashion. I respectfully urge the Commission to give the 5760 Freeway Confluence Project full and fair consideration when the project funding application is submitted formally next month, as well as incorporating this project into a fully comprehensive program to fully and effectively address the region's long-term transportation needs. Thank you for both your leadership and your dedication toward resolving California's transportation challenges while building the necessary transportation and goods movement systems that will power California's economy into the 21st century. I respectfully thank you for the time today, and I wish everybody a very happy holiday season. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Newman, I want to just thank you publicly for putting policy over politics, for doing what is right for the voters and taxpayers and travelers throughout California who depend on well-maintained, smoother roads, and traffic relief above political careers. I won't be speaking for the commission, but as one commissioner and as a private citizen, your vote in support of Senate Bill 1 was the absolutely best possible outcome for all of us who depend on a strong economy to create jobs that put people to work for projects that help the rest of us get to work. I could not be more thankful for your citizen service. Thank you.
Commissioner Gardena, thank you so much. That means a great deal to me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator, if I also may echo my colleague, because both Mr. Gordino and I in our day jobs represent business groups that recognize if you can't move people and goods, you can't do business in the state. And your strong work on SB1, certainly with Chairman Frazier, but in an area where you're fighting a very, very strong anti-repeal SB1 movement, I also want to lend my commendation and thank you for your leadership in that regard.
And Commissioner Dunn, it means a great deal to me as well, especially coming from you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And that ditto is equally appreciated. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Feel free to expand and revise your comments past ditto if you would like, Chairman.
Okay, we'll move on to item 52.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kyle Gredinger, the Acting Chief for the Caltrans Division of Rail and Mass Transportation, is going to be here today to give us an update on their operations and activities.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I'd like to speak to you briefly about a very exciting development we have in our effort to procure additional rail rolling stock for the intercity rail fleet in California. We have been in a joint procurement effort with the state of Illinois and its partner Midwest states and the Federal Railroad Administration for several years, and came across a manufacturing logjam with a previous manufacturer, but we have moved past that now. We are working with a prime contractor, Sumitomo Corporation of Americas, or SCOA, has now contracted with Siemens Mobility Systems with a significant manufacturing plant here in Northern California with over 1,000 employees, where they are teaching advanced manufacturing skills and sort of rebuilding the welding and metalworking trades in California. So it's quite a great change in the program here that we're bringing these jobs to Northern California. The scope of our rolling stock procurement includes engineering, design, production, assembly, inspection, testing, delivery, and warranty services on 137 new single-level rail passenger cars, 49 of which we will be receiving here in California. The total contract price of this procurement is $371 million, including $132 million from California, and $84 million of those dollars will be coming from the federal government. This is I believe you have screens in front of you. Rendering of the future cab car. This is a coach car that has a driver's cab in the front end of it so that we can have a locomotive pulling on one end, get to the end station, stop, and without turning the train around, head back out in a short amount of time. This is based on a design that was developed in Europe on an Austrian railjet train and has been modified for the U.S., and 20 of these cars are about to begin service on the private Brightline rail service in South Florida sometime this month, we believe. The passenger amenities will be significant on these cars. We will have Wi-Fi and passenger power outlets at every seat, very comfortable seating and large windows. The JPAs and I have been to the factory to see a mock-up of one of the Florida cars before it headed out for delivery, and we marveled at the comfort, and it was clear that the German engineering and quality of design is strong in these vehicles that we're going to be getting. We'll also have room for bike racks, and we'll work with the JPAs on the amount of luggage storage and bike rack accessibility in these cars. And they are going to be fully ADA accessible, including with wide gangways between the cars so that a wheelchair can get on the train and go from end to end without any obstructions. Production is set to begin in the summer of 2018. We've already begun our initial final design meetings with the team starting last week in Sacramento, and we'll be meeting almost weekly for the next month or so. The first train set is estimated to enter revenue service in the summer of 2020, and the final car is estimated to be delivered by May of 2023. Right. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 53.
Commissioners, tabs 53, 54, and 55 are informational updates from the 3 state-supported passenger rail joint powers authorities, or JPAs, in the state. David Kurtowski, the Managing Director for the Capital Corridor JPA, is here to provide an update on the and an overview of the Capital Corridor passenger rail service. Okay, should we move to, you want to go to the LOSSAN update?
Sure.
It's tab 54.
Do I?
Is it?
This is not my presentation.
Oh, we need to go to the LOSSAN.
It looks
Tab
like
54.
great. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for inviting us to speak with you today. It's my pleasure to give an update on the Pacific Surfliner service and the LOSSAN Rail Corridor Agency. My name is Jennifer Bergner. I'm the Managing Director for the LOSSAN Rail Corridor Agency. I am an employee of the Orange County Transportation Agency, which serves as the managing agency for the LOSSAN Agency. So if I might, let me give you a little bit of background on the corridor itself and on the agency itself. LOSSAN stands for the Los Angeles to San Diego to San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor. It does not go in appropriate geographical order. However, it is reflective of the way the corridor had developed over time, initiating service first between Los Angeles and San Diego and then extending on to San Luis Obispo. The LOSSAN agency is comprised of 9 member agencies in the Joint Powers Authority. The agency itself began in the late 80s as serving largely as an advisory board to the Caltrans in the state to provide passenger rail service in the corridor. In 2012, we amended our Joint Powers Authority through some enabling legislation, SB 1225, that then allowed us to assume local administrative responsibility for the state-supported Amtrak-operated Pacific Surfliner service. A little bit of history on the corridor itself. The corridor is over 351 miles, stretching from San Luis Obispo, as I said, to San Diego. It is arguably one of the most complex corridors in the nation. We have 7 different right-of-way owners along that 351 miles, 5 different dispatching handoffs, 3 different passenger rail operators that include the intercity service, as well as 2 commute operations provided by Metrolink and North County Transit District called the Coaster Service, in addition to 2 heavily utilized freight owners along the corridor itself. We are the second busiest intercity passenger rail corridor in the entire nation, second only to the Northeast Corridor. We've carried over 8 million passengers last year alone. And maybe if I could pause here for just a moment to provide you a little bit of information or update on what we are encountering today with the fires up in the northern section of our corridor. So we operate 10 daily trains from LA north, and thus far this morning we've had to cancel 6 of those 10 due to fires encroaching within the right-of-way. Those fires have moved much quicker than anybody anticipated. They have jumped the freeway and are adjacent to the rail tracks. We have inspectors out there inspecting the tracks now with the hope of being able to reopen those tracks later this afternoon and resume regular service. Unfortunately, though, at this point, we are not operating anything north of Los Angeles. And that is unfortunate for a variety of reasons. First of all, it impacts many, many people trying to make their way to work, but we were also offering our service as a method of evacuation for folks in that area. So now with an inability to run those trains, we certainly cannot provide that service, which is rather unfortunate. We are watching the situation very, very closely, and we will open and resume service as quickly as we possibly can. So since we came into our current incarnation as the LOSSAN Rail Corridor Agency, we have worked hard and recognized some significant successes along our corridor. One of the most notable, I believe, is the very top box you see there on the slide in front of you. We implemented our 12th round trip between Los Angeles and San Diego. That was the first true increase in service in this incredibly busy corridor in over 14 years. And it was a heavy lift to get that train in service, but it is running and by all measures is doing very, very well. We have implemented a number of incentive programs and very robust marketing programs to highlight the corridor, really educate folks along the corridor that it exists, and through those efforts, we have been able to increase our fare box recovery to a little over 80%, one of the most successful in the nation in terms of fare box recovery for service. We have increased our ridership 2.8% and our overall revenue by 4.9%. One of the ways in which we do that is we operate traditionally an unreserved service. You can buy a ticket for a specific train, but you have the flexibility to ride any train you want, actually, unless you buy a business class ticket. And with a business class ticket, that provides you a reserved seat, a dedicated seat for you. We implemented an expanded business class service, thereby offering a nice mix on our trains of unreserved, that flexibility, and reserved. And through that, we have seen record-breaking increases in ridership and revenue in the business class. Last month alone, we saw a 48% increase in ridership and revenue just in that enhanced business class. We also applied and were successful in receiving 2 TIRCP grant applications totaling over $83 million. Those awards are intended and underway right now with implementing a transit transfer pass program that allows passengers to seamlessly transfer simply by flashing their ticket to 12 connecting providers along the entire corridor. It also funds a number of capital improvements, primarily on the southern end of our corridor, but that will improve efficiency, operational safety, and capacity on the southern end of our corridor. Sounds like we've had a lot of great success, and we really have, but it has not come without its challenges as well, and we have challenges ahead of us. Kyle just talked a little bit about equipment, and I'm going to touch on that. We don't have enough equipment to meet our demands at this point, and while the equipment will be coming in, we certainly need some immediate relief in terms of standing room only, and we don't have enough equipment to run additional service at this point. We use 9 sets daily to operate our 24 round trips, so we are lean and we are efficient. But we are looking for opportunities to secure additional equipment to utilize in the interim until the state's orders do start to be put into service. We have a significant outstanding capital need. A good portion of our corridor is single track, meaning a train can only move in one direction at a time. The train running contraflow has to pull over and wait, sometimes up to 35 minutes for one train to pass. This exists primarily on the north end of our corridor, but it does cause us significant constraints and, again, an inability to run additional service. We will be seeking, again, another TIRCP grant award in the coming call, or in the current call, to look for opportunities to add infrastructure on the north end that would then enable us to run additional service there on the north end, and working with the freight or the host railroads, which in this case happens to be a freight owner, to implement those improvements. We can't seem to keep pace with our ridership, which is a great problem to have, I guess, but it does impact the overall quality and experience that folks have on our trains. So we are trying, again, as I said, to utilize some of our prior TIRCP money to lease equipment in the short term to provide some relief while the state's equipment orders roll in. We do appreciate very much the SB1 programs, the State Rail Assistance Program that does provide dedicated assistance. That has enabled us to start negotiating with host railroads to offer incentives for better on-time performance. That is the one area we continue to struggle in, though we have recognized some good success since our October 9th schedule change. We are working with all 7 of the owners to look for opportunities to improve our on-time performance and create a better overall passenger experience. One of the opportunities as well is the money that has been set aside in the STIP for various capital improvement projects, including capitalized maintenance and rehab on our somewhat aging system. That will also allow us to continue to operate a successful service and be more reliable in doing so. Priority projects coming up will be a 13th round trip that extends not just between LA and San Diego, but also up into the northern area of our corridor. Again, a heavy focus on on-time performance. You have seen from some of your quarterly reports that we were down in the 60th percentile for on-time performance, which is just unacceptable for both us, for the state, and for our passengers. We are hovering now right around 80% on-time performance, so that's a pretty dramatic increase since October 9th. We are looking also to provide peak period service to the northern end of the corridor, so that's a longer distance intercity commute type service from LA into Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. We hope to implement that in the April timeframe. and then also continue to work just in general improvements with our host railroads for reliability and opportunities to increase our service. We are embarking in coordination with the other two intercity corridors, looking for opportunities to change our ticketing and fare systems so that they are completely interoperable, independent of the Amtrak Direct system, and we would have direct control over each of those. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Christine and Fran.
Can you
And Lucy?
expand, oh, excuse me, a little bit more on the interoperable ticket service? Will it or will it not include Amtrak?
It will absolutely include Amtrak. What we are hoping to do is right now we are limited in the way that we can ticket because we are tied to the Amtrak national system, and there are
Right.
limitations within that system.
Right, their phone service is only moderately successful.
Agreed.
So
So we are
I
looking.
got on a standing room only train a couple of weeks ago and wanted to upgrade while it was moving, and it took quite a while, but I did eventually get into business.
I hope the rest of the experience was good for you. What we are hoping to do is in the coming months, work with the state, as I said, and the other two corridors to implement and develop our own ticketing system that ties back into Amtrak's national system, but gives us more flexibility within our trains. Simple things such as being able to reserve a specific seat. So if I'm a family of four and I want to reserve a four-top, I can go onto that and reserve it there, and then I can make my connecting trip if I'm traveling from LA to San Diego, for example, hop off and be able to be able to
See what I mean? What's your timeline? When would that be a reality?
We've just are starting to initiate this effort. We've got our
So
very first
2
kickoff.
years, 3 years?
I would certainly hope that we could do it much sooner than that. There are systems out there that could be modified to serve our needs now.
Thank you so much, thanks.
I have a question. The high ridership demand, I think, is fantastic. I think the stand-up only is going to last for a little bit, and then people, it's a really long ride to be standing. What are your barriers to leasing for equipment exchanges and stuff? Because it seems to me like you have a much greater chance of meeting your immediate needs by, equipment, borrowing some equipment. So what are your barriers?
The barriers we have faced thus far is we would go to Amtrak first, because on our corridor in particular, we lease about 90% of the equipment we use from Amtrak. Amtrak does not currently have any equipment available for us to lease. We were, through the last round of TIRCP, provided $15 million in funding to lease equipment. It was tied to a specific type of equipment. Those negotiations are not proceeding in a way that I had hoped that they would, and that equipment is at this point proving to be more expensive than we can adequately fund. We are working with another vendor now to lease equipment from them. That seems to be a very positive option for us. However, some of the issues that we encounter are we need particular amenities on our trains, or we need a speed rating that we haven't been able to achieve. We do go up to 90 miles an hour on our corridor, and some of the equipment that we've looked at can only go 79. So that impacts not just us, but the entire corridor itself. I would say that funding has been a constraint in spite of the $15 million award, because equipment is in short supply and it's expensive. The other constraint is just necessary modifications and then the FRA testing and commissioning process to bring equipment into our corridor. I am hopeful that the current negotiations we're having with this new vendor could yield equipment as soon as April.
Lucy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quickies. I love that you acknowledge the competitive programs under SB1 for the LOSSAN corridor. I think it would be helpful for all of us to perhaps, if there's a way to do this, is to highlight that with your, ridership to help us promote what's out there and the benefits of this. We've got a heavy lift education campaign on SB1, so anything that you can do to help viral that, I think, would be helpful. The second question for you, Jennifer, is there anything in the Tax Reform Act at the federal level that the Commission needs to be aware of that might impact the LOSSAN corridor? Yesterday, we're agreed to send a letter, and any of your thoughts on that would be helpful.
Commissioner Dunn, I think in terms of the intercity service, there's nothing in the bill that immediately hurts us. However, there are provisions within that bill that may impact the other passenger operators, the commuters. So with respect to employer-driven repayment and other things, that would be the primary impact that I would see to the corridor, is then it will disincentivize ridership.
I thought that there were some employer benefits for employees that are being eliminated.
On the two commuter services, that is absolutely correct.
Thank you. Oh, hang on.
In the area where you have single track and that's a constraint, is there enough right-of-way in the right-of-way for a second track, or is it an issue of needing to acquire additional right-of-way?
We have two areas. When we talk about our corridor, generally speaking, we divide it into two sections, LA North and LA South. The LA South section is making leaps and bounds towards eliminating the single track territory, in part from the last round of TIRCP that provided funding for double tracking through much of the San Diego region. However, there are two regions on that southern end, in the city of Del Mar and in the city of San Clemente, where there is not sufficient right-of-way to double track, and we would need to look at other options. On the northern end of our corridor, from LA North, there is in large part sufficient room. There's just a little bit of a struggle with the host railroad in that particular area to implement these improvements. We are working on a program with them in concert with the state to incentivize them to allow us to double track more of that territory, but again, it's certainly not without cost. So I would expect that in the current TIRCP call for projects, you will see a number of projects looking for bridge replacements and sidings on that north end.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see that, but just one second. I see that Assemblymember Medina has joined us. If you would like to say something to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Just wanted to stop by and thank the commission for being here in Riverside and in the 61st Assembly District. Thank my colleague, Mr. Frazier, the chair of Transportation, and just to say how important the work of your commission is to the state of California for the infrastructure, the economy. I think the governor, when we were looking at SB1, saw the importance of this region in transportation when he came here. And certainly as the representative of the 61st Assembly District serving on the Transportation Committee, I understand how important transportation is to this inland part of California, whether it be goods movement, where we are a center of goods movement for the nation, or whether it be the freeways and highways that our citizens use to get to work every morning. The work you do in transportation, very important to our area. So it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And I just wanted to come by to say hello and to thank you for your hard work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Stacy? Sorry.
See if I get teed up here for San Joaquins. Well, good morning. A couple things to tag on to what Jennifer said. First of all, I thank her for picking me up from the airport this morning very early when she has all the issues to deal with related to the fire. And second, I have been completely supportive in Northern California of trying to get some of the equipment down into the LOSSAN corridor. We're in the middle of an overhaul of the rail cars, which has made it somewhat problematic, and we're looking at ways with Caltrans to expedite that, because I think if we can shuffle the existing fleet that the state has, rather than force LOSSAN to go out and look to lease, it could be something that we could do sooner and cheaper. So I certainly support her in that effort. Also, I think in Chad Edison and Kyle Gradinger, here with the state, you have the people that it takes to put together a new ticketing system. What was talked about earlier about the obstacles of the Amtrak system or any of the other historical electronic systems, they aren't going to be what takes us forward. And I think we do have two people in leadership positions that could do something, and we all would be committed to work with them to do that. Hopefully more in something like 9 months to a year, not years, but we'd like your support to just throw down and try to put that system together. So I think some of the things that were mentioned earlier are the direction that we need to go. Well, I hope you're ready for a puzzle. San Joaquins are a little bit of a puzzle. We make up the spine of the state, but we have not shared the typical corridor characteristics that the capitals and the Pacific Surfliners have. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. Those other two corridors have a lot of the same riders every day. On the San Joaquins, it is very common and closer to average for people to be gone for 4 days. And you'll see in a minute, the schedule really doesn't allow anybody to take a trip to an urban center and back in the same day. We do have a long corridor, a little bit longer than LOSSAN, about similar number of counties. So we share some of the, I would say, the route mile characteristics, but we have a much simpler operating environment. We have two railroads, so we just have one handoff between the BNSF and Union Pacific, who's my other host railroad, and we have numerous stations in all of the counties. So we have dove into the San Joaquin system, knowing it was different than our partner corridors, and it's taken some unlayering. The San Joaquins, more than anything else, has resembled more of a long-distance Amtrak corridor. So it has been a process to look under all the layers and figure out what makes this corridor tick. And the things that we found is we have a throughway bus network that I'll show you in a minute that is massive, and we have to focus on that and make sure that is optimized. We have to work on-time performance, and Jennifer is right. The state rehab programs that fund capitalized maintenance and other reliability improvements are the ticket to making people choose to take the train because it's reliable. And then we need to try to get into the urban centers in the morning. We can't get there in the late afternoon and require that everybody who takes our train stay somewhere overnight. But while we do that, we do face something that the other Amtrak systems face, and that is competition from the megabus and the Bolt systems that are attracting some of the ridership away. In the dotted lines there, you see the connecting bus network. It's very vast. It's a $19 million program. That's my entire ACE train and connecting bus program up in Northern California. This $19 million is just the throughway bus program for the San Joaquins. Just as an example, the cost of the routes between Bakersfield and Southern California are over $10 million a year. Now, why those are all in the San Joaquin budget and not some in Jennifer's, I don't know, but it's a very large program. But the throughway bus network does allow us to connect a very diverse number of communities of all different types up and down the state. On-time performance has been a very large issue. We worked very hard with BNSF when we came on the scene, just as we do with Union Pacific for the ACE trains, really trying to dial in what was going on with that reliability. And because of those efforts, we went from 73% up to 84%. But as you'll see here, we had an unfortunate act of nature last year with the big storms. Just as we got things up close to 90%, the storms hit. And so we took a lot of delays. We had a lot of track out of service. And, you know, it was really a bummer because we had done so much work to get people to think they could take the San Joaquins and be on time. Only the central part of the state was affected. ACE and the San Joaquins. Capital Corridor was fine. Metrolink coaster down here, fine. Surfliner's fine. Really, the bulk of the hit was up in Northern California. So I believe, after looking at this for several years, the schedule is what affects the ridership. If you look here, you see that the Surfliners get in early in the morning, multiple trains into the urban center. Capital Corridor, same thing, whether it's in Oakland, San Jose, Sacramento, you see that they're getting in with multiple trains before noon. At the way bottom of your slide, you see the poor little San Joaquins that get in at best at 10:30. And generally, all the rest I've bolded, all the PMs, are all those trains that get in the afternoon, which really makes it, I think, as you can relate now, somewhat problematic to have the same kind of ridership growth that the other two corridors do. And then even Bolt and Megabus, you see that they get in early as well. In addition to that, they have quicker travel times, they have the more trendy amenities that everybody's looking for, really cheap fares, few stops, and they're attracting the younger and multicultural markets. There's very specific cultural bus rides and events that people just aren't as attracted to the San Joaquins. Okay, so the puzzle doesn't go without a solution. We have been working with Caltrans. Our board has been taking a lot of hits because people hold on to the nostalgic notion of the San Joaquins as part of the old Amtrak system. So we've really had to sort of fight our way through this, but we think it makes sense. Our partner agencies think this makes sense. Get into Sacramento, get into Oakland at an earlier hour. But we found we can't do that starting in Bakersfield. The way to do that and have a rational trip is to start in the mid-corridor around Fresno. And our first plan is to go up into the northern urban centers, but we have a later plan to get down into Bakersfield at that same, with that same service. Planned arrival time, Sacramento, 7:40. We've got a train slot lined up. We can hand it off between BNSF and Union Pacific. Everything will work fine. Same thing to Oakland. We have another handoff, but it looks like we can get a slot at about 8:40, which Oakland has a little bit later start times. Now, I am a person who doesn't like to wait years and years and years for things. I am not a planner. I'm an engineer. I want to build, build, build. So we are going to roll out the Morning Express. We're not going to wait for new equipment. As you heard from Jennifer, that's not going to come. So we need to sort of reconfigure what we have today with the existing equipment and crews. And if we do that just by changing what we have, we can roll out the Sacramento part of the service this spring. We're looking at May, I forget if it's 7th, the first Monday in May, just by rescheduling the existing trains. And then we will use that. We've got another train that we could move from Bakersfield to start in Fresno about a year later. Now we'll see. I don't like to add too much new stuff at once. We want to make sure we can tweak and evaluate things. But it looks like in the next 2 years, we'll be able to add 2 new morning services to the urban centers. Now we have a big plan too, which will probably take a few years. And to do any expansion, as all my partners know, you need a willing host railroad or two. You cannot push against the wall if you don't have the support of the freight railroads where we run all of this service. But we do have willing railroads up to at least a certain extent, especially the capacity between Merced and Fresno and Sacramento. Sacramento is a very underserved market. I think I spoke before you about a month ago. It is just crazy how underserved our state capital is. There's 3 million people there. There's one train that gets there about noon, one train that gets there now at about midnight. So that is not befitting our state capital. So we are working on a deal with the 2 railroads and our partners. We hand off a lot with LOSSAN, so we have to make sure that that is coordinated. But we'll be starting with 2 new round trips after the Morning Express, 2 new round trips up to Sacramento. We have a chance to run on a different line that has capacity and reach the Sacramento airport, which is a big deal. The Central Valley is not well served. All of the international airports are quite a distance away. And so if we can offer people a train trip to an airport, that's going to be a big boost for both the riders and the area. We're also looking at expanding to the north. Sacramento is growing northward, and so there's a intercity and commute pattern that's being built from the northern counties into Sacramento proper. So we are working on that right now. In the next 5 years, we see several more trains, but we're probably closer to 10 years for the hourly service that we're seeking between Fresno and Sacramento and Fresno and Oakland. So watch for our updates this spring. I'm hoping we'll have some fun announcements, and maybe we get a few of you on board the train, but we look forward to your comments, and please come for a ride on the San Joaquins. Please.
I think she's read the Constitution knowing that we can't accept a free train ride. Huh?
Not for free. No. Pay your share.
Thank you very much. I understand that.
Yeah, I think we have David here now for the Capitol.
David?
Good morning, Commissioners. Talk about just-in-time delivery. Just came in. I apologize for my tardiness. That's not typical of me nor the Capitol Quarter, so we'll just start it off with that. So here we go. Let me see, is the slide deck loaded? It is, great. Oh, there it is. Thank you. So what I'm planning on doing today, if we go to the second slide, is to give you an overview of how the Capitol Quarter did in FY17, and then as well talk about our future plans. So for FY17, it was a historic year for the Capital Corridor as far as record setting. We set records for ridership, revenue, and system operating fare box ratio. There we go. We had 1.61 million riders. That was 3% above FY16, the year before. We set a record for revenue with 34 million. That was almost 6% above the prior year. And then our system operating ratio, the standard that the state sets for us is 50%, and we came in at 57%. That's the highest we've ever had. And that was primarily due to, obviously, record ridership and revenues, but also we've been able to stabilize our operating costs. And these operating expenses also include our call center, which is outsourced to BART. We don't have Amtrak provide that information. It's actually provided through BART, and it has been since 2005. As far as the areas where we need improvement, on-time performance, while we were above the state standard of 90%, we were at 91%, which was 3 percentage points below last year. That broke our record. We had 7 straight years previously as #1 in the Amtrak system. We finished #2 behind the Hiawatha's, which is a Midwest service between Chicago and Chicago and Milwaukee. And we've been working with Union Pacific ever since we stubbed our toe in the beginning of last year, about this time last year. There was some track work that was being done as part of our travel time savings project. And we had some problems with the work crews overextending their times and tied up a lot of our trains in and out of San Jose in the morning, and that had cascading delays with our service. As far as customer satisfaction, we slipped slightly. Last year, we were at 89%. We came in at 88%, highly satisfied. That's a good number, but we'd like to get that number up to about 89, 90%. Our conductors are ranked #3 in the system. Our food service attendants are ranked #2. So all indicators are in the right direction. It's just when you have poor on-time performance like we did at the beginning of last year, that weighed down our scores. We do a lot of deep dives into data. We get a lot of data. I'm not going to go through this here, but this pie chart shows the difference between last year's late trains and this year's late trains. We had approximately 300 more late trains, and we run about 10,000 trains a year. So it's enough to make that difference to go from 94% to 91%. And 2/3 of those new late trains were due to host railroad construction activity issues, and as well as third-party delays, which have been primarily trespasser incidents on our right-of-way. We are feeling that homeless encampment issues that many urban cities are having, well, they're getting also pushed out from the urban areas onto our railroad right-of-way, and we're working with Union Pacific, and part of, I'll talk to you about what we're doing for the next couple of years, and as far as I'm concerned, it'll be an annual work just to make sure that we do everything we can to deter trespassing on our right-of-way, because it really does clog up our railroad. Any type of trespasser incident is about a 2-hour delay. We're running trains every 30 to 40 minutes, so you can just see how it cascades through the remainder of the day. One of the things we've been tracking just very recently, I mean, we've always had the information, but now we have a database that we've developed, is our customer comments. And the one thing I want to highlight is we're getting about 1 complaint a day. So we have about 5,000 to 6,000 passengers a day, so we're getting 1 complaint a day. That's good, especially when I talk to my colleagues at BART. But what we're finding is that we're actually getting a lot more, I shouldn't say a lot more, but we're getting more comments on asking for information about our service, and that is what we have found in our surveys over the last 2 years. About 40% of our riders are riding for the first time on a Capital Corridor. That is a monumental shift, because about 5 years ago, that number was about 10 to 20%. So we're seeing a lot of new riders, and that has a lot to do with our growth, and it has a lot to do with what we're seeing as far as the congestion on the highways. Looking at our operating expenses, what we've been able to do to control those operating expenses, PRIA is the Passenger Rail Investment Improvement Act of 2008. In that was a policy that was developed to allow states to pay their fair share of Amtrak's operating expenses. The Capital Corridor and the 2 other corridors within California have always been doing that. There were other states that were basically getting a free ride, and now they are paying their fair share. But because of that way that policy is done, we've been, at the Capitol Corps, been very focused on not only increasing ridership and revenue, but to see what we can do about controlling our costs. And what I want to highlight is, since the enactment of that policy in FY14, the ridership has grown 14%, revenues have gone up 16%, our operating expenses have actually decreased 2%, and our net operating costs, our annual allocations actually dropped 14%. So what we've been able to do, some of the highlights are what I can point out, the two areas. One is fuel has dropped, but it is going back up over the last year. We've seen about a 15% increase in our fuel costs. But the other area we've been working on is mechanical costs. We've changed the way our maintenance is done, and it's actually really helped to drop our costs, and we've actually been able to shed a car off each out of our 8 train sets. We've been able to shed a car off 2 of those. So it's all unit-based maintenance costs, so that helps us once again stabilize and control costs. Now I'd like to just go into some of our achievements, and then I'll just close up with what our plans are. I think you probably have heard the Tier 4 Charger locomotives, which are manufactured in Sacramento by Siemens, have been introduced into our service on October 23rd. They were put into lead revenue service. We're also, thanks to the work of CARB, we've got the engine manufacturers for our locomotives interested in participating in a pilot program to use 100% renewable diesel fuel. We have that on one train set. It's our train that goes up and down between Oakland and Auburn on the weekdays. We've started the pilot program in August 2018. We had an additional locomotive on there just in case something went wrong. We tested it for 2 months. There's been no issues, and we actually have that unit operating solo. There's no second locomotive out there. Just recently, we struck a deal with Union Pacific to pay our fair share of the trackside positive train control. This is the collision avoidance system. And now we're working with Amtrak to make sure that they get a back office server in place so that we can start demo testing in mid-2018 to meet that congressional deadline of December 31st, 2018. And then very recently, we had the opening of the Fairfield-Vacaville station, and there was over 10 years of planning, design, and construction, and our Capitol Corridor trains started service there on November 13th, 2017. And it's been very well used. I would say the parking lot is not 100% utilized, but it's getting close. Here are some pictures of the Charger locomotives. As I mentioned, they meet all of the Buy America, Build in America specifications, and more importantly, it's built in California. So we're very pleased to have Siemens as our partner. The engineers love it. It's got a higher rate of acceleration and a dynamic, improved braking system. And we'll wait to see on this, but they've promised lower maintenance costs due to a different propulsion system. So we'll wait and see on that. Here's a picture of the Fairfield-Vacaville station. On the left, it's 5:05 in the morning when our first Capitol Corridor train served there November 13th. And then the picture on the right doesn't do it justice because this is what the picture we had at the time when it was under construction. But it is a beautiful station. You can see there's the tunnel, and then where the plaza is. What we're doing is we're making sure no passengers cross live tracks. If you've been to Sacramento, it's like that. If you're at the Richmond station, the same thing. It's safety and security are our top priority. I just want to go briefly over the 10-year capital program. It's approximately $776 million. We have approximately 1/3 of the funding secured. And then we're going to be targeting and going after opportunities with the various SB1 funds. For the first time ever, the federal government is now participating in providing funding for state-supported services in Amtrak through a federal rail title, and so there's some FY17 funds that were appropriated last year, which should be coming available. These programs of projects include our Sacramento-Roseville third track project. That's been broken out into 2 phases. Phase 1 has been funded, and we're completing starting the final design next month. And then we're also working with Caltrans District 3 on its Business 80 widening project because that will affect our the railroad tracks that Union Pacific has, for which we're going to be building bridges over there, over those, the widening of that project. So there's a lot of close coordination on that. Our Oakland-San Jose Phase 2 project will allow us to take out an additional 10 minutes of runtime between Oakland and San Jose, make it very travel time competitive from the Oakland Coliseum station to the Great America station. It will approximately be a 30-minute travel time compared to an hour if you were driving. We're going to need additional rolling stock for our service expansion. There's lots of discussions I'm sure Stacy and Jennifer have talked about. We'll be participating in that. We're going to customer improvements and then safety, security, and state of good repair projects. An example, our capitalized maintenance allocation that we just received from you, and then this program for future years, that keeps our reliability up above the 90%, and that is one of the key elements, as I've mentioned, that keeps our riders and actually helps to retain those riders and grow ridership, because if people know that the service is reliable, word of mouth gets out, and that's how we've been able to really track our ridership growth. And then here's a little snapshot of the picture, what we're going to be going after for the call for projects for the 2018 SB1 funding opportunities. As I mentioned, we're going to be working with Caltrans District 3 on the Sac-Roseville Third Track Phase 2 effort. We're working with Alameda County Transportation Commission and the Port of Oakland on the Oakland to San Jose Phase 2 project. Both those projects have the support of Union Pacific Railroad. No, that's true. They do support it. In fact, they're very actively involved in both those. I had an all-day meeting yesterday with the Oakland to San Jose Phase 2 team members, including Union Pacific, working on a strategy, a framework for a partnership going ahead. And then as far as some system-wide improvements, we're working with CalSTA on an integrated ticketing and travel program. We're finishing up Phase 2. Actually, Phase 2 will be finished up the first quarter of next calendar year. And then our electronic digital message signs, since we've had since 2001, we are the first intercity passenger rail service to have these digital ETA signs, are, believe it or not, coming at the end of their useful life. And so we're going to use our SRA funds, State Rail Assistance funds from SB1 to get those up and done. And then, as I mentioned, when you see the dedicated Union Pacific right-of-way gang, this is the workforce is going to help us to clear our right-of-way of debris, vegetation, and homeless encampments. And this is going to be very important because if you travel on our trains around the urban core and some areas in Solano and Yolo County, we really need to be focusing on that. So that closes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
You know, it troubles me to hear one of our operators talk about shedding cars that follows another one of our operators saying she's got turning riders away and standing room only kind of rides. So I would like to ask our staff maybe to give us a little more info. I don't know what we can do to help, or perhaps it's under Chairman Frazier's watch to see if you know, something we can do, because it seems to me that we ought to be able to do equipment exchanges a lot faster than we can add new track, and I don't want to turn away riders, and I'm not happy necessarily that it's a standing ride for very long, so I'm happy they're on the train. But it's challenging to sit here and hear one operator talk about shedding cars and another operator desperate to get some. So I don't understand all the rules and regs and everything, but if there's anything we could do, I'd be interested in knowing what we could do, or perhaps Chairman Frazier, I don't know what would be under your watch as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Commissioner Hyman had said, that anything in any agency has an issue that we can look at and correct. We want to be responsive, and so anybody has an open door in our committee.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, staff will look into this and see what working with the different corridor leads, finding out what the problem is and if there's a solution that can be had, whether that be legislatively or administratively necessary, and report back to you. Is that?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, tab 56 is an action item. It's on the approval of comments for the California State Rail Plan. Federal regulations and state statute require that the development of a state rail plan that will identify a comprehensive and integrated statewide passenger rail system and discuss freight rail needs as well. The 2018 California State Rail Plan was released for public review by Caltrans on October 11th. Staff commends Caltrans and the California State Transportation Agency for preparing this plan, and also the large group of stakeholders that participated during the process. The rail plan is quite ambitious in pushing for a 12-fold increase in passenger rail ridership over the next 20 years at a cost of $137 billion. This would be an annual average expenditure of $7 billion over the next 20 years. Staff has prepared comments on the rail plan for your consideration. In general, the comment letter from the Commission would suggest that Caltrans identify possible outcomes if the entire planned funding amount does not become available, specify if the Class 1 railroads are in general agreement with the plan, and provide a path forward regarding how and also the costs involved to mitigate climate change impacts to rail facilities. Based on Commissioner input, staff has added 2 additional comments which are in italics in the letter, which is a pink in your folder. The revised comment letter has been provided to you as a pink. Staff has also incorporated several additional comments which in the italics. Number 4 on page 3 states that the draft plan should identify the possible sources of funding needed over the next 20 years to carry out the plan. And then also number 6, also on page 3 of the comment letter, which suggests that Caltrans should identify how they intend to measure the success to implement this plan. And then also based on some last minute commissioner input, I'll also just read out, it's not in the comment letter, but I'll read it out loud for the record, a couple additional comments that we will include, or that we plan to include in this letter. First of all, the first new comment would be, given the significant future increases in passenger and freight rail activity, the plan should address how collisions and other accidents with vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians can be mitigated. The next comment, which we will include in the letter, is the plan should articulate how it supports the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategies process. And finally, the last rail comment that we would include in the letter is, as rail activity increases, capacity constraints on existing rail lines will become more profound. The plan should identify rail corridors that may experience these impacts. With that, staff recommends your approval to transmit the Commission comments on the draft 2018 California State Rail Plan to Caltrans. We also have Kyle Gardinger from Caltrans here to answer any questions you may have on the 2018 California State Rail Plan.
Jim?
So $7 billion a year is a pretty hefty number. Is that all money that's over and above what's available now, or is there some of it already in place?
Good morning. That is a large number. The SB1 has contributed significantly to our ability to fund the early years of the program. A lot of the work that is identified in the 2022 and the 2027 timeframes are going to be, we have supported programmed projects in the 5-year time frame. There are additional projects that we're trying to look at the additional resources in SB1 and ways to fund those in the next 5 years or so, working with our partners within Caltrans, with the JPAs and others, to take some of this new money and apply those to make a more robust 5-year program. The number does continue to grow over the time frame from 5 years to 10 years and beyond, and so identifying the resources for those sort of years 3, 4, 5, and beyond is something we're going to need to do continually. SB1, as I mentioned, gives great help to that effort. The cap and trade program is also significantly helping our investment program, investment strategy. We also want to work with the regions, and the self-help counties have done an amazing thing for themselves that we believe we can work together and identify projects on the rail system. And as counties go back and develop new regional measures and identify new local funding sources, we want to make sure that the rail and commuter rail projects and transit projects as well are tied into the state rail plan vision, and that we're identifying how those programs and projects can be supported through regional measures as well. But we do not have funding resources identified for the long-term vision, primarily only the first 5-year program, and then a reasonable set of possible resources over the next 10 years.
Thank you.
But there will be a shortfall with the current funding, absolutely.
Right.
Just a quick question. Is a Class 2 railroad a short line or a Class 3?
A Class 3 is a short line. A Class 2 is generally, there's a very small subset of them. They are generally holding companies, like Genesee and Wyoming is active in California, and they own a number of Class 3 short line railroads. I don't know the exact definitions. The AAR, Association of American Railroads, defines
the
that.
lingo with us freight people, we typically call the Class 2s the short line. I just want to, just on a little legal technicality, make sure that we're precise in case someone decides to, use it against us. So clarification there.
We will review that with staff.
Thank you. This is an action item.
Thank you very much.
Motion by Dunn, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 57.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 57 is a supplemental allocation request. It's for $1.9 million. This is a project to, this is a supplemental to award a contract. There were 5 bidders on this particular project. 2 of the low bidders were disqualified. We have to go to the 3rd bidder and examine this project, and rebidding this project is not going to give us any better bids. So staff recommends that you approve this $1.9 million supplemental allocation.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Motion by Kehoe, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 58 is withdrawn.
Yes, 58 is withdrawn, so we're going to go.
Item 59.
We're going to go to item 59. Item 59 is a supplemental of $1.1 million to close out a contract. The original contract was to remove, this was an emergency contract to remove 4,300 trees, and it covered about 49 miles of the route. During the construction, it was determined that they would be able to remove more trees. So an additional 7,680 trees were removed and over additional 70 miles, bringing in a total of 11,980 trees removed over 119 miles. The problem that developed here, the contractor was not billing the department in a very expeditious manner. He basically forgot to do some billings, and at the end of the project, he realized that he didn't bill, and he submitted his bills, and they amount to $1.1 million. The trees have been cut, the contractor has done the work, so really we need to pay him, and staff would recommend that you allocate this $1.1 million.
Can we pay as expeditiously as we got billed?
Probably not. But would that be a motion?
No.
There's a motion by Kehoe, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 60.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 60 is the big item on the agenda. This is a supplemental allocation request to continue construction on the, and it's pronounced different ways, Schuylerheim or Schulerheim Bridge. The issue here is at one point the contractor chose a method to remove concrete which is underwater under the mud line, and that method failed. The concrete still has to be removed. They are going to be going with a totally different method. The cost of removing this concrete is about $88 million. There's also about $40 million worth of claims on the project. The DRB ruled against the department, so the claims have to be paid. Staff examined this project every which way we could, and we've come to the conclusion that the concrete still has to be removed no matter what. Because of the navigational requirements, this is in a navigational channel, the claim has to be paid. The project itself is about 91 or 92% complete. So it really gives us no option but to really allocate these funds to finish this project, because no matter what we do, if we don't finish the project, we still have to do the work. So staff would be recommending that you approve this supplemental allocation of $138 million. District 7 Director and Shirley Choate and the construction team are here if you would like to have any questions answered. But staff's recommendation is that you do approve this supplemental allocation.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Inman. Questions?
Bobby, one quick thing. Yesterday, I think we were all under the magic spell of Brian Maroney on the Bay Bridge implosions. So I just wonder, he told us he was looking for work, so can he take a look at this project? Does he have any in-yes-vation that he was bringing up yesterday? I don't know. Carrie, maybe give him a call.
Well, actually, they are going to be using one of the methods that Brian used on the Bay Bridge, which is the saw cutting of concrete. So they are using his stuff.
Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 61.
Commissioners, item 61 is a additional monies for the major damage restoration reservation. The original reservation for this fiscal year was $140 million. Under the emergencies that have already happened, the department has already overrun this reservation by $85 million for the fires that just happened in Northern California. Another $115 million is to replenish the reservation, and as you see what's going on here in Southern California, probably that replenishment is going to be used up pretty fast, so I expect them to be in at the next commission meeting asking for even more replenishment. Staff recommends that you approve this additional request of $200 million for the major damage restoration reservation.
Need a motion? Motion by Dunn, second by Tavaloni. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 62.
Yes, Commissioners, item 62 is a amendment to the 2016 shop. 22 new projects are being added to the shop and 96 projects are being revised. Staff recommends that you approve this shop amendment.
Motion by Arp, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 63, Stephen.
Yes, item 63 is an allocation of $73.4 million to 13 shop projects. Staff recommends that you approve this allocation request.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Arp. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Item 64 is a request for allocation of pre-construction activities for shop projects. There's one change here under the environmental. We're not doing 12 projects, we're doing 11 projects. Project number 10 is withdrawn. With that, staff would recommend that you approve $20 million for the environmental phase for 11 projects, $39.4 million for the design phase of 29 projects, and $3.2 million for the right-of-way support phase of 21 projects.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn.
Yes.
Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Item 65, Commissioners, is a request to allocate support for open phase projects. These are 17 projects that are stragglers from when we did the giant allocation back in June. These projects, for some reason, fell through the cracks. They were still open phases, and the department needs a allocation for these. $8.5 million for 3 environmental phases, $4.5 million for 5 design phases, and $1.4 million for 9 right-of-way support phases. Staff recommends that you approve this allocation request.
So moved.
Motion by Dunn. Second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, the next agenda item is 66. These are, we're starting on the Prop 1B allocations. This is under 66, this is a request of $49.7 million for a Prop 1B shop project allocation. Staff recommends that you approve this allocation.
Motion by Kehoe, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Agenda item 67 is a local bridge seismic retrofit program, Prop 1B allocation. This is a lump sum allocation to the department of $2.1 million. The department from that allocation sub-allocates to the local bridges. Staff recommends that you approve this $2.1 million allocation.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Kehoe. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 68.
Commissioners, items 68, 69, 70, and 71 are STIP amendments for notice. They're all information items. Under item 68, the City of Calexico proposes to reprogram $4.5 million in border infrastructure funds for the construction component to the Cesar Chavez Boulevard widening improvement and 2nd Street to Route 98 project in Imperial County. These funds were originally programmed in fiscal year 16-17, but due to the delays in right-of-way, the funds lapsed. They are now ready to proceed and will request this project be programmed in 17-18. Under item 69, Caltrans is proposing to amend the Route 11 Highway and Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Facility project in San Diego County. The department proposes to update the funding plan, segment the project into 2 deliverable segments, Segment 2 and 2A, and program $3.5 million in border infrastructure funds to Segment 2A. Item 70 it's also an amendment for notice. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority proposes to program an AB 3090 cash reimbursement project and advance the I-680 southbound high occupancy vehicle lane gap closure project in Contra Costa County. The project is currently programmed in fiscal year 19-20. The agency is ready to proceed and is proposing to use their local funds to advance the project. The reimbursement schedule will be split in 3 years and will start no sooner than the year it is programmed. They also are proposing to update the scope of the project in this amendment. Under item 71, the Orange County Transportation Authority, on behalf of the City of Brea, proposes to program an AB 3090 cash reimbursement project and advance the right-of-way component of the State Route 57 Lambert Road Interchange project in Orange County. The project is currently programmed in 19-20. The agency is ready to proceed and proposes to use their local funds to advance the project. The agency proposes the reimbursement schedule start in 18-19. I would like to note the following on this particular request. The proposed schedule is not consistent with STIP guidelines. Staff will recommend that the reimbursement schedule be spread over 3 years and not start any sooner than the year it is programmed. I would also like to note that staff, OCTA, City of Brea, and Caltrans are discussing a possible alternative in the 2018 STIP. So an amendment may not be necessary at the next commission meeting. So that's all for that one, okay?
Questions? Very good, thank you. Item 72.
Item 72 is my item 2. Commissioners, this is an action item. This is a financial allocation request for 2 projects in the state highway system in Mendocino County for $8,157,000. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines in the program. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Item 73 is also an action item. This is a STIP allocation for a locally administered STIP project. This is an allocation request of $393,000 for planning, programming, and monitoring for the Merced County Association of Governments. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines and the program. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Paul, second by Christine. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 74.
Item 74 is an action item. This is a STIP allocation request for a locally administered transit STIP project. This request is for $6,880,000 for the Crenshaw LAX Transit Corridor project in Los Angeles County. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines and the program. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Inman, second by Keyhoe. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Item 75 is an action item. This is a STIP allocation for a locally administered STIP rail project. This request is for $1 million for the delay in block signal and Encinitas rail project in San Diego County. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines and the program. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
Motion by Christine, second by Lucy. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 75. 76.
Commissioners, item 76 is an action item to approve an allocation of $13,123,000 for 31 active transportation projects. 14 of these allocations are being funded through SB1 road maintenance and rehab account funds. Staff has reviewed these requests. I want to make one note that on project number 9, it says that the right-of-way certification is pending, that they did obtain their certification, so that is no longer pending. So these requests are consistent with ATP guidelines and the adopted program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Gordino, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 77.
77 is an action item to approve an advance allocation of $377,000 for the Junction School Safe Routes to School project in Shasta County, and that's programmed in 1819. Staff has reviewed this request. It's consistent with ATP guidelines, the adopted program, and the ATP policy on program project amendments and advanced project allocations. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Gardino, second by Paul. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Item 78 has been withdrawn.
Item 79.
79 is, this is a contract award time extensions for 9 ATP projects, and those are shown on the yellow time extension table. Staff has reviewed the extension requests, and they are consistent with ATP guidelines and recommends their approval as shown on the time extension table.
Motion by Carl, second by Joe. Questions? I got this big wall called ARP right there. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Commissioners, item 80 has been withdrawn, so I'm going to move on to item 81. Agenda item 81 is an action item. This is a time extension request of 6 months for contract award for a TCRP project in Kings County. Staff has reviewed this time extension and recommends 4 months. I've talked to the agency. The agency agrees. They believe they can get it awarded within 4 months. Staff recommends your approval of this time extension.
Motion by ARP or Paul? Paul, motion by Paul, second by Christine. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Agenda item 83 is an action item. This is a time.
Let's not forget 82,
Again.
unless you want to do 82.
No.
No, all right.
Everybody's waking up.
Commissioners, agenda item 82 is shop project award extensions. Staff has reviewed the extensions and is in compliance with most of the department's requests, but under project number 1, the request is for 9 months. Staff is recommending 3. Under project number 5, the request is 6 months. The commission staff recommendation is 3. Same thing with project number 6. Request is 6, recommendation is 3. And under project number 7, request is 12, staff recommendation is 9. With that, staff recommends that you approve these award extension requests.
Motion by Joe, second by Christine. Questions? All in,
Just for clarity, on the sheet, we're voting on staff recommendation.
right.
Yes, with the changes on staff recommendation.
Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Agenda item 83 is an action item. This is a time extension request for contract award for 2 locally administered TCRP projects in Sacramento County. The agency is requesting 3 months. Staff has reviewed this time extension and recommends approval.
Motion by Joe, second by Christine. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Commissioners, item 84 is an action item. It's a project completion time extension for 1 ATP project. Staff has reviewed this request and recommends approval.
Second?
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Any other matters or public comment? Seeing none, everybody have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll start the new year rolling, and Carl does have something.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, for my colleague commissioners as well as our incredible commission staff, you have your turkey trot racing shirts up here, and it's in my enlightened self-interest not to have to carry them home. Sorry to have interrupted you, Mr. Chairman.
And then as we do adjourn, we would like to keep in mind that we got a lot of folks in a very dangerous path. Keep them in your minds and hearts, and don't forget about the folks in the Santa Rosa area also. So with that, we are adjourned, and Merry Christmas.